You know, deep in Central Africa, there's a country that's basically written the playbook on political survival. We're talking about a place where one man has held power for over 4 decades, and he hasn't just done it with an iron fist. No, he's turned his nation into this incredible geopolitical pivot point. This is the story of Congo-Brazzaville, a state that has absolutely mastered the art of playing world powers against each other. So how on earth has it managed this incredibly delicate balancing act? Well, let's dive in.
Okay, it all kicks off with this one number. And it's a wild one, 94.90%. Yep, that was the official result of the 2026 presidential election. It handed President Denis Sassou Nguesso, you guessed it, another term. I mean, a result that lopsided? The opposition literally called it Stalinian. And you can see why, right? It feels like a throwback to an era of one-party rule of totally manufactured consent. This isn't just about winning an election. It's a raw statement of absolute, unquestioned control. And that, of course, begs a pretty huge question.
Which is really the core of what we're talking about today. How does one man manage to hold on to power for more than 40 years? And maybe even more puzzling, why do so many other leaders on the continent look at him not as a dictator, but as this crucial key to keeping the whole region stable? It's a real paradox. And to even begin to understand what's happening now, we've got to rewind the clock a bit.
So, picture this. It's April 16th, 2026 in Brazzaville. The presidential inauguration is happening, and let me tell you, this is no quiet behind-the-scenes affair. It is a major diplomatic event. You've got over 20 African heads of state right there in attendance. Even the sitting chair of the African Union is there. Now, this is so much more than just political politeness or protocol. It's a massive statement. It's a signal of continental acceptance, and it basically gives a huge stamp of legitimacy to a regime that's all about one thing: continuity.
Right, so a show of support like that, it doesn't just happen overnight. This kind of legitimacy, it was forged over decades of intense political maneuvering, brutal conflict, and some pretty convenient constitutional changes. So let's really break down the foundations of this, well, remarkable political longevity.
The president's journey to power has been, well, it's been anything but a straight line. He first grabbed control way back in 1979, back when the country was in its Marxist-Leninist phase. Then, get this, he actually lost the country's very first multi-party election in 1992. But just 5 years later, he came roaring back to power, this time through a really violent civil war. And then, the final piece of the puzzle, in 2015, he pushed through a constitutional change that got rid of term and age limits, effectively paving the way for him to be president for life.
And we really need to pause on that 1997 Civil War because it was absolutely brutal. This wasn't just some political squabble. It was a deeply rooted ethno-regional conflict. You had the president's Cobra militia, based in the north, fighting against the Khoikhoi from the southwest and the ninjas from the Pool region. The war was just devastating. We're talking an estimated 400,000 people killed, and the capital city, Brazzaville, was left in ruins. And you have to understand this national trauma is the key. It explains so much about the country's deep-seated desire for stability today, even if it comes at the expense of what we might call democracy.
Okay, so let's fast forward to today. Congo-Brazzaville's survival strategy has gone completely global. The regime has become a master of what you could call pragmatic multi-alignment. Basically, they are skillfully pivoting between a whole new set of global partners to lock down their economic and political future. It's a fascinating dance, so let's see exactly how it works.
First up, you've got Russia. Moscow has really stepped in to become the country's new security guarantor. The Africa Corps, which, is basically the successor to the Wagner Group, has set up a training base just outside the capital. And they're not just there to train local forces. Oh no. They're also building a super strategic oil pipeline from the port of Pointe-Noire. This gives Moscow a massive economic and military foothold, right smack in the heart of Africa.
And then, of course, there's China, the undisputed economic engine of this whole operation. In 2025, Beijing and Brazzaville inked a truly colossal $23 billion deal. The goal here is simple but ambitious: double the country's oil production and build out all new energy infrastructure. I mean, China isn't just another partner at this point. For Congo-Brazzaville, it's an economic lifeline.
And if you want to see just how crucial that lifeline is, just look at these numbers. Nearly 43% of all of Congo-Brazzaville's exports go to one country, China. Think about that. That gives Beijing absolutely incredible economic leverage and really solidifies this strategic pivot to the east. But wait, there's another player in this game, a newer one. The latest partner to join the strategic pivot is the United Arab Emirates, and they have a very specific role.
The Emirati tech group G42 has been brought in on a mission to digitize the government's public revenues. The whole idea is to use AI and modern tech to finally get a handle on the systemic corruption that has plagued the nation's finances for so long, especially when it comes to its ports and managing its natural resources.
So here's the crucial point, the big takeaway from all this. By balancing these incredibly powerful new allies, Russia for security, China for economy, the UAE for tech, Congo-Brazzaville has carved out this really unique role for itself. It's become, as one observer put it, a pivot of mediation, discreet but constant. And why is that so important? Well, think about it. In a region that is just plagued by instability, look at the neighboring DRC and the Great Lakes region, President Sassou Nguesso positions himself as the one indispensable negotiator. It's like a form of diplomatic armor. It makes him too important to fail, not just in the eyes of his neighbors, but for global powers too.
Okay, so the country has absolutely mastered the high-stakes game of geopolitics. But, and this is a big but, its domestic economy tells a much, much more fragile story. So let's peel back that layer and take a look. To really get your head around Congo's economy, there's one key term you need to know: rentier state. It sounds complicated, but it's not. Just think of it like a landlord who doesn't really work, they just live off the rent from their properties. Well, Congo-Brazzaville does the exact same thing, but its property is oil. It basically rents out its oil fields to foreign companies and then lives off that revenue. And, as you can probably guess, this creates a really dangerous dependency.
And you can see that dependency in these absolutely stark numbers. Oil makes up a staggering 90% of the country's exports, and half of its entire economic output. This kind of extreme reliance means the nation's entire budget is basically held hostage by the wild, volatile swings of global energy prices. And all of this leads us to the great paradox of Congo-Brazzaville. Because on the one hand, you have this immense wealth. We're talking over 100 million barrels of oil produced every single year. But on the other hand, that wealth just isn't creating opportunity for the people. Public debt is absolutely crippling, sitting at nearly 90% of GDP. And maybe the most shocking number of all, around 40% of young people can't find a job. The country is rich in resources, but that wealth is not building a prosperous future for the vast majority of its citizens.
So you have this economic pressure cooker, right? And that brings us to the final, and honestly, the most critical question of all. The president is now 82 years old. The predictable election of 2026 is in the rearview mirror. So now the real battle for tomorrow, the battle for who comes next, truly begins.
And wouldn't you know it, the main contenders are all in the family. First, you have the son, Denis Christel, who is widely seen as the heir apparent. But it's not a done deal. He's being challenged by other really powerful clan members, like the nephew who's in charge of the intelligence services, and a cousin who manages all the country's lucrative, big-money infrastructure projects. It is a classic power struggle, brewing just beneath that calm surface of official stability.
So where does this all go? What does the future actually hold? Well, experts are looking at about 3 possible scenarios. The first and most probable is what they call controlled continuity. That's where the president manages to complete his term and ensures a nice, smooth handover of power to his son. The second possibility is a security rupture. This is where that family power struggle boils over, triggers widespread unrest, and could even require Russia to intervene to keep things stable. And then there's the third scenario, the most hopeful but honestly the least likely one. It's regional integration, where Congo-Brazzaville and its massive neighbor, the DRC, finally build that bridge between their capitals and create a thriving new economic hub.
So, at the end of the day, we're left with this one final, massive question. Congo-Brazzaville has proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that it can survive. It is the survivor state. But can it build a future that isn't totally dependent on just one man and just one resource? Can it finally turn all that oil wealth into real, lasting prosperity for its people? That, right there, is the billion-dollar question hanging over the Congo River.